high or government deficits and debt are too high, it's going to be corrected. That is what the winter season does. It brings reality again. Fall booms like the Roaring '20s and in the last 2 decades bring a lot of innovation and new stuff, but we can't take advantage of that until we get back into reality again. So I think you're going to see people change. I don't think you're going to see people change until you see a crisis. And I think the younger generation today actually is more conservative than the baby boomers and more grounded. If you just get this crisis and get a new system where they can do well again.
Well, actually, it's funny you say that. I mean, I know you follow statistics and things, but younger generations are anti-abortion. They're more pro-Second Amendment. They're more anti-big government. That's true. It is more even like people 40 to 60 or so that's more of the trendy group. I mean, there's some young people that are in la-la land, but I agree with you. It's, what do you call the group right below the baby boomers?
Well, there's the baby busters, they call them Generation X, and then that's the downward generation. Then the next growing generation is Generation Y, or the millennials. The Generation Y, the millennials, in the generation cycle over history is more like the Bob Hope generation that grew up in the Great Depression and fought World War II. They will be the opposite of their parents. They will not be like the baby boomers.
Look at what the so-called hippies have done. I mean, they claim they want liberty and things. They're a bunch of tyrants.
Well, again, though, I mean, they have a place, too. People don't like winter. They don't like depressions. They like booms. They don't like busts. All of these things. We have 4 seasons. The Creator didn't create these 4 seasons for no reason. We see 4 seasons in everything we study. Each season has its place. The baby boom, hippie types, they're very creative, and they create a lot of breakthrough technologies because they're like kids. They start anew, but then you have to grow up, and then the next generation is going to be more mature and is going to be different. The Henry Ford generation was before the Bob Hope. They were the people who were, roaring '20s and all this stuff, and artists and stuff. They were more creative, and they created cars and automobiles and all these things and phones. But it was the Bob Hope generation that brought it into mainstream practical application. So these generations are different. They're supposed to be. But the baby boomers are aging, and they're waning. The next generation is going to have more influence, but they need to get all of this excess from the past, all of this debt, all of these excessive regulations and structures out of the way so they can move forward. We'll see what they're like when the baby boomers in the past gets out of the way. I think
sure, but these cycles are studied, and if you look at governments, militaries, they're all addressing what you're talking about, Mr. Dent, but they're saying that they're going to artificially, with technology and propaganda, manipulate it and use this crisis to be the final season, a scorched earth, or like a volcanic eruption, and bring in a tyranny from a conscious perspective. I mean, you're an informed guy. Certainly you've run across those writings and plans and stuff that's being developed.
Yeah, I don't see it as a tyranny. It's natural for people in power to increase their power. That's happened through all history. But the opposite trend, and I've studied history for thousands of years, not just decades or years, the trend in history has been greater economic freedom, greater individual freedom, and more wealth being pushed down the system. You go back 200 years, you go back 1,000 years, you go back 5,000 years.
No, we're living like kings compared to people.
Population controlled everything. Way more tyranny in the past. Way more.
No, I agree with you. We're living like kings. We have godlike technology. What we have today would have been magic 100 years ago. I agree with you. Liberty is on the march, but I'm telling you, the control freaks are going to try to block us. I want to come back, take a few quick final questions for our guest. Straight ahead, Harry S. Dent. I'm Alex Jones. We'll give you his website as well, straight ahead. Let me ask you a question. Don't forget, we have launched the new social network. It's been up a month or so, and it was in beta. It had a few bugs, but now it's purring like a kitten. You want to get politically active, meet people, whether it's shooting, camping, dating, hunting, getting involved in your local area. There are now hundreds of thousands of people on the site every day. 30,000 people have created profiles. Planet Infowars, one word, planetinfowars.com. Our guest website that you can go to is HS Dent, just the initials, hsdent.com, hsdent.com. And I agree with him. The cycle is towards liberty. But I've read and shown you Bertrand Russell, globalist documents where they were 80 years ago saying this and talking about how they would construct this system to socially engineer us. But they're bucking the course of history. And I believe they're going to fail, but it's going to be a war in the process. I want to jam in a few quick questions from callers. But Mr. Dent, did you want to add anything to the statement you said earlier about history?
No, I agree. It is towards freedom, but there are these battles that the internet allows greater decentralization of information. You're already seeing major dictators fall around the world. We predicted this 5 or 10 years ago. So that's the trend. But you're right. It is a battle.
Let's quick questions here. Charles in Ohio, you're on the air with our guest. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Now, I don't know a whole lot about the trend setting, but I mean, obviously, if you guys have watched the trends long enough, why haven't you guys been able to stop this economic crisis from happening?
Well, I mean, I'm going to do that. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I bet you get that question sometimes where people say, you need to fix it, Mr. Dent. What's your comment to the caller?
Well, I can't. I mean, I've had people recommending me to leading politicians and people. They're not going to listen to me because what I say isn't acceptable to them. They're trying to defend the system. They're doing what they do. In fact, I tell people we've been able to predict all the trends in the economy broadly without looking at politics. The politicians don't matter that much long term. They don't want to hear that either. So, no, what we tell people individually, you got to do what you can do. You know, you can't change the winds, but you can reset your sails is what I always say.
Yeah.
None of us is in charge.
Yeah, that's how you're going to beat this, is getting self-sufficient, waking those up around you so that as things go into this cycle of collapse, you're ready. You know, the best thing you can do is take care of yourself, Charles, and try to wake up some people along the way so that people aren't caught flat-footed. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir. I had one other thing I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay, we're almost out of time. I'm going to put you on hold and come back in overdrive. I'm going to go to Janet, too, in New York, listening on WASB 1310. But let's real quick. Malcolm in Texas, you got about 30 seconds. Go.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you how much you think the downgrades of the banking system are because of foreign bond exposure, and also how much do you think the shadow banking system is going to start affecting the real retail side of things?
Great question.
Well, I mean, clearly, the shadow banking system was how we created so much more debt than in past cycles. And all countries, private and government systems, have created more debt, 2 to 3 times more debt than in any time compared to the economy and GDP than any time in history. We can't even find a debt bubble in history to compare to this. So it all happened together. It's all going to break down together. And so all these things are interdependent. And that's why nobody can really control this. They're trying to control it. But what we said in the Great Depression ahead and again in the Great Crash ahead, these governments are going to lose control of this before it's over, and they're going to break down as well.
Exactly, and they're trying to sign us onto their derivatives that's impossible to pay back, and it's not our debt predominantly. Amazing, incredible. John in Illinois, I'm going to do a little bit of overdrive, so we'll see what we can get to there. Mr. Dent, very powerful interview, very informative, and thank you so much for spending time with us.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Alex.
All right, there he goes. The website is hsdent.com, and onward and beyond, we will continue. Stay with us. That's right, another hour of global transmission as we attempt to awaken humanity. It is the 2nd day of July, 2012. I am your host, Alex Jones. We're going right into your telephone calls right now, ahead of more news coming up in retransmission, but we're live right now. Let's talk to Janet in New York, a WASB 1310 AM. We've been on that station about 12 years. Janet, good to have you calling in today. Welcome.
Thank you so very much. Amen to you, my brother. You are absolutely correct. Regrettably, we are a different group of people. And one of the questions I had for your guest is about the Obamacare. Going back to the question at the top of the hour, asking us to call in with our concerns. My concern is the tax that will be levied against some people who the government decides choose not to be able to pay or to afford for health care. They're healthy. They don't want to buy health care, so the government is going to tax them. Here's my question. How long is it going to take for people to recognize the Ponzi scheme and say, gee, if I don't have a job, not only do I not get a tax, but I get my health care for free?
Well, that's a really great point, and you've hit the nail on the head. In fact, you made me just think of the one point I hadn't made that many others have made ad nauseum. This is designed, and Michael Moore pretty much admitted it, to bankrupt healthcare. It's a tax to the insurance companies. It'll be the illegals are going to pour in, already do. They get their kids paid for, and then the child's a U.S. citizen. It's designed to bankrupt things. And it's a tax also to the IRS because they get penalties and interest, and they keep that part. So it's the government in our healthcare. But it's designed to bankrupt things on purpose, and it will do it. And it's got tens of thousands of doctors are quitting because they know what this means. It's not about them making money. Specialist doctors make millions. Your average doctor, you can look this up, or dentist is making less than they were making 20 years ago, a lot less. I mean, you think a regular person has bills? It's like $500,000 for a medical degree on average, the 8 years, and then with interest, you're talking over $1 million. I mean, I know Harvard doctors that have been, doctors out of college for 20 years, and they've just now paid off their loans and all the rest of it, 20 years later. So everybody's like, oh, the rich doctors, they're greedy. Okay, folks, best healthcare system in the world, been screwed up by government, now it's going down the drain. Good to hear from you. Great point, Janet. John in Illinois, I know you were for the guest, but he had to leave us. Go ahead and make your point.
Yeah, well, I just had a quick thing for regarding Max Kaiser's rant a couple months ago when he spoke about how Jamie Dimon threatened MF Global's John Corzine. So I was actually just asked Harry if he agreed with that, if it was in fact actual, and then also, does that have anything to do with the $2 billion loss that J.P. Morgan Chase recently admitted to? I mean, is there a connection between that, or what's going on with that?
Yes, I believe that loss was connected. And, of course, we knew it was J.P. Morgan got the $2 billion over to London and then denied it. But it was already in the news. It was already in Bloomberg and in Forbes that they got the $2 billion. And then it was $800 million, $1.3 billion, $1.6 billion that was owed back. And we hear all these different numbers. But best I can tell, they gave back about $1 billion to investors, farmers, and people that were hedging their bets and kept the rest of it. So I don't think it would be a $2 billion loss. But look, now they're saying they're sitting on top $9 billion in losses. Folks, the derivatives overhang in the Washington Post 2 years ago, which the only reason I'm quoting Washington Post is it fits into other economists we've had on. It's what Tarpley says. He said that a year before they said it. Guy's pretty smart. $644 trillion is what the U.S. owes in the global derivatives market. That's the crud our criminal banks created. It's over 1.5 quadrillion, 1,500 trillion worldwide. So we've got a little less than half of that. So can you imagine how big that is, how bad that is, how impossible that is to pay back? I mean, it's a fraud. They're just using our sign onto that debt as a way to get us more and more indebted to them. So when they bankrupt everything and write off their debt, we'll be little guys and can't get out from under the debt they've gotten us into. You understand? They're exempt, we're not. That's the fraud. Arrest them. Arrest them.